How good is the maize and blue? Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. Best discussion, debate, and analysis. Leave those comments and questions down below. All right. Michigan defeats Purdue 21-16. Not exactly scintillating. But Michigan's turned out to be pretty much the team that I anticipated. I did predict this team would make the college football playoff as a 10-2 football team. To get that accomplished, they would have to defeat Ohio State at the end of the season. Ohio State is clearly a much better football team, but we know the bugaboo that the Buckeyes have run into the past 4 seasons, but Michigan was their equal 3 of those 4 seasons, if not better, certainly in 2023. So I don't know that Michigan can rely on black magic this year, but they will be at home, and they've got better than a puncher's chance defense, running game, all of it put together. I won't do the typical instant analysis of the game and break down all sorts of scenarios and plays and so forth. I'll go back to a few here, but I want to focus on Michigan's situation. So a few things that popped up here in regards to the level of play and what I saw out there. One is that Bryce Underwood has put together back-to-back awful football games. He's a true freshman. This was expected. Progress doesn't happen in a straight trajectory upward. It happens in stages. 5 steps forward, 3 steps back, 2 steps forward, a step back, etc. After the Oklahoma game, I was mighty impressed with what he was showing us in being a more consistent quarterback from play to play, but also showing us those 3 to 5 splash plays. Have not seen really the splash plays the last couple weeks. I will say that I watched this game, but I was more interested in USC and Nebraska, so it was a afterthought to a certain extent, but I had the entire game on and watched it and went back to a certain extent. But Bryce Underwood here had a surefire touchdown bomb to Channing Goodwin. Now, we saw this in 2023, if I'm not mistaken, with J.J. McCarthy. Missing throws deep, just missing them, usually overshooting them, which is a good thing, better than a quarterback that does not have the arm to get it out there, which Bryce Underwood, that's never going to be a question with him. But he misses, I believe it was Channing Goodwin, on what would have been a surefire touchdown. He had several steps on the defensive back. He also missed a throw to Marvin Klein that would have been a touchdown. Marvin Klein had beaten his defender down the right sideline. Just toss it up there, make the nice throw, lead him into the end zone. Touchdown. Could have even underthrown it by a couple steps because Klein had a good 3 to 5 yard lead. And he basically didn't even come close to hitting Klein's heel on his shoe with the throw. So he missed throws repeatedly. And, of course, he had the bad interception in which he rolls left, he sees a man, he fires it, and they get the interception. Hidarius Hines for Purdue. And then we see the replay, and we see Andrew Marsh all by his lonesome, not across the field, where maybe at that point, having rolled left and been under some duress, that it would have been difficult to find a receiver. But no, Andrew Marsh was right in his line of sight, didn't see him, didn't throw it, through the interception. Michigan was the better football team than Purdue. They should be the better football team than Purdue. The final score was 21-16. So let's be balanced with our analysis here, because Michigan will throw up the total yardage. I don't remember exactly what it was, but they outgained the Boilers by about 120 yards, held Purdue to 276. They ran the ball down their throats for much of the game, and that was the difference. Michigan was the better football team. I don't want to say they had the game under control. I never felt as though they were going to lose the lead or lose the game. But when you only win 21-16, the fact is they could have lost the game. One play could have done it, but they kept it under control. Now, Bryce Underwood did throw the interception in the red zone. Yes. Michigan fans could say, well, that was a scoring situation that we should have cashed in on, and we did not. True, you should have, but that's part of football. If the quarterback's not good enough to make the right read, and the defensive back Purdue really undercut the receiver, made a nice play and caught the football, something that defensive backs have an issue with at times, that's a good play by the defense as well. Also, Bryce Underwood obviously should have scored when he reached for the goal line. I have an issue with the rule, but I won't go into that right now. I think the ball should go to the offensive possession back where they fumble the football. Why do you reward a team, the defense, for a recovery that they didn't make? I don't get that. So he fumbles the ball through the end zone. That could have been a Michigan touchdown. I will buy that argument better than the interception play because that's just a bad throw and a bad decision by a quarterback and a good play by the defensive back on the other side. You know, we could flip that around to Purdue being on the cusp of the red zone and Derek Moore just completely blasted Ryan Brown, and that was a strip sack. Excellent play. That's just football. That's football. You're going to have there is one thing to have turnovers that are dropped passes, deflected passes that should be caught, those sorts of things. You know, I saw Connor Wigman, the Houston quarterback, 3 times on Saturday just flat out drop the football as he was cocking it to throw, just dropped it. And when the defense recovers that, that's a gift. But we're talking about legitimate turnovers by both teams that were good defensive plays. So that's where Michigan stood. Again, they got a gift in regards to Purdue shanking the punt when they were punting from their own end zone. It was like a 12-yard punt out to the 25, 30-yard line. So that put them in great shape to score the touchdown that put them up 14-7 at that point. But Michigan was the better team, should have won the game by probably double digits, won it by 5. And again, game's in jeopardy when you're only up by 5 points. So this was not a decisive win. And this is what I want to get to right here after we just address Michigan defensively, of course. And at this point in the season, 8 to 9 games in, everybody's missing players, but Cole Sullivan, Jimmy Roller, Cole Sullivan. Oh yeah, Jayshawn Barham, of course, started the game, but he was knocked out in the first quarter. We will find out if he is ready for the next game coming up against Northwestern. And he's probably the best defensive player, certainly the most explosive, freakish player that Michigan has on its defense. So he would be a huge loss. But the defense did hold Purdue to 276 yards. But let's put this in perspective. And I'm not big into comparing scores when you look at one score versus one score. Like Ohio State beat Washington by 18, Michigan beat them by 17. They must be the same team. The quality of the two teams must be exact, right? I don't believe in that. But in collections of scores, we can start to see trends. And with Michigan, the trends aren't the best. They beat Purdue by 5 points. Well, USC beat them on the road by 16, and Illinois beat them on the road by 16. Minnesota beat them by a touchdown. Northwestern beat Purdue by 19 points. Rutgers beat them. Rutgers' only win this season in the Big Ten is against Purdue. Rutgers beat Purdue on the scoreboard about as bad as Michigan did. So that's 5 games comparison right there. Actually 6. Wisconsin lost to Iowa by 37 points. They lost to Ohio State by 34. They got drubbed even by Maryland 20-3. Michigan, again, was it a threatening situation? Were you concerned that they would lose? No. But at one point in the second half had a 1-score lead. Won by 14. Did not pull away. Did not stomp. Michigan 2021, 22, 23, stomping these teams. Now, we're not holding them to Big Ten or national championship aspirations, but they do have a shot at the Big Ten. We'll look at that in just a second. Michigan State is not a good football team. They almost won at Minnesota on Saturday. That would have been their first Big Ten win, but they are 0-6 in the conference. They lost to UCLA by 25. They lost to Indiana by 25. They lost to Michigan by 11. Nebraska is a decent football team. They've got a pulse, but they have not beaten a ranked team in forever. They never beat a good team. When has Nebraska ever beaten a good team? The last time they beat a decent team was like 5 years ago. Seriously. So the 3-point win against Nebraska, I know Michigan probably was a little bit better than 3 points, but not much. Minnesota beat Nebraska by 18. Okay, the Washington game stands on its own. Michigan has had 3 opponents on their level. Oklahoma, I almost said embarrass them. They did not embarrass them. It was a game. They certainly controlled the game, dominated the game. Michigan had 1 offensive play in the second half. That was Justice Haynes for 75 yards and a touchdown. But Oklahoma was clearly the better team against Michigan. Against USC, again, not an annihilation, but USC dominated them on the ground. USC did to Michigan what I expected Michigan to do to USC. They threw it okay, but they ran the ball down their throats. They were the more physical team, as was Oklahoma. Now, the third decent team, good team, top 20-ish team that Michigan has played, obviously, at the Big House was against Washington. They win that by 17. To their credit, Damon Williams had a bad game. Did he have a bad game? I think he somewhat did, but it was also the Michigan defense being the Michigan defense. That was a strong effort. They held Jonah Coleman down. That was a strong defensive effort, the likes that we've not seen against Washington, except when they played Ohio State. Do we make the comparison there? Buckeyes win against Washington by 18. Michigan wins the game 24-7 by 17. Almost identical. And if you watch the game, almost identical. One game. And Ohio State traveled to the West Coast. And Michigan had the advantage of playing at home. If you believe the point differential that Vegas serves up, it's 3-point advantage at home. So Ohio State doesn't win that game by 18 points on the road. They win it by 24 at home. Again, I'm not going to blow out one game, but you can make that one comparison. For one Saturday, Michigan played as well as Ohio State against the same opponent. But against the rest of these teams, they should be squashing these teams. I was on Steve Deace's Michigan podcast this past Tuesday. It was interesting that all of a sudden Steve was optimistic following a Michigan State 11-point win. That Steve was optimistic about the remainder of the season. And I was trying to let him know that, at least from my vantage point, my opinion of Michigan football hasn't really changed, other than it took a bit of a dip after Oklahoma. And I got to say, against USC, I picked them to win both of those games. Ironically, I picked them to lose the Washington game. Not smart of me. Didn't nail my picks there. You do want to catch my picks, though, because I usually get them right. They're on Patreon, 12-7 against the spread this past weekend. But I did miss that one. Now, this one against Purdue, I definitely took the 21 points in Purdue. Give them to me. Michigan's not doing this to anyone, so give me Purdue and 21 points. What I was pointing out to Steve Deace on Michigan Podcast is that I think his optimism is based on the situation. It's not based on the quality of this team. And I do think it's a good team. I think against a reasonable to good Big Ten schedule with one difficult non-conference opponent, which they had on the road, they're 8-4, 9-3, leaning toward 9-3. And that's probably what's going to happen unless they can pull off the stunner again against Ohio State. Would it stun me? Of course not. All right, 7-2 at Northwestern. Don't mark that one down automatically. I'm guessing Michigan's going to be about a 10 to 13 point favorite. That's not a gimme. At Maryland, Maryland just figures out, i.e., forget the Indiana game because Indiana is crushing everyone. Maryland is figuring out how to lose to everyone. They had double-digit leads against Nebraska, Washington, and UCLA in the fourth quarter and lost them all. So Michigan should be okay. They've got their heads screwed on right. Maryland does not under Mike Loxley. And, of course, they've got a true freshman quarterback. Whoa, both teams do. Malik Washington for Maryland. And then the matchup against Ohio State. And this Buckeye team is trying to get a running game. But, man, the passing game is ridiculously good. It is the best passing team in America. That was not the case at the beginning of the season. They were protecting Julian Sayin from a play calling standpoint. But now they're letting him rip. And he's letting them rip downfield. I usually match up Ohio State and Michigan going into the game against common opponents because we used to have divisions where we would say, okay, Ohio State, Michigan, they've played 5 division opponents, and usually at least one, if not 2, teams from the Western Division were the same. So I had 6 to 7 games to make the common opponents comparison, and it usually was pretty insightful. But this year, we'll just have Washington, Purdue, and Nebraska to compare Ohio State and Michigan. But first, again, they got to get past Northwestern and against Maryland. Also, keep in mind, Michigan fans, if you pull off the stunner and tie for the second spot in the Big Ten, let's say Indiana wins all their games, Ohio State's expected, but Michigan beats Ohio State, 8-1 in the Big Ten. That doesn't automatically get them to the Big Ten championship games. We would have to work out some scenarios. Iowa USC and Oregon all have one loss right now. The good thing, if you're a Michigan fan, is that Oregon plays Iowa, Iowa plays USC, and Oregon and USC play. They all play each other. So there are going to be some losses mounting for those teams. Interesting situation with Michigan. Would love to hear what you have to say concerning the Wolverines. And Jordan Marshall was spectacular again on Saturday night. They certainly have the running game to get it done. Hopefully Justice Haynes will make it back soon. Appreciate you being here. The Voice of College Football. Comments and questions down below. Check out our Michigan channel. If you're not aware, you have to be at the Michigan channel Tuesdays and Thursday nights, and also post-game. And the rest of the time here at the Voice of College Football, we've got a 10 p.m. Eastern Time show. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. See you then.